if there's nothing else in this world, go back to that key point that you know that you have inside you, that you know that you feel for the people that are closest to you, that love always wins, no matter what, even when they're gone.
Fans who have followed Valerie Bertinelli closely were stunned when news broke that her inheritance had suddenly made headlines, sparking questions no one saw coming. At first, it seemed like a simple matter of money and family matters, but behind the scenes, emotions were running deep. Long-held expectations were shaken. Private decisions were now being talked about in public. How did things reach this point so quickly? And what hidden details might soon come to light in this surprising and deeply personal story? Valerie Bertinelli's real inheritance. When people talk about what Valerie Bertinelli gained later in life, they often skip the most important part of her story. Her parents, Andrew and Nancy Bertinelli. While magazines and gossip sites focus on her house sales and cooking shows on Food Network, the real story began much earlier, inside a simple middle-class home. It was a home filled with love, but also with high expectations, where doing your best wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. Her father, Andrew, worked as a top executive at General Motors. His job meant the family moved from place to place, but he always made sure they lived a stable and comfortable life. He believed strongly in discipline, hard work, and doing things the right way. From him, Valerie learned how to stay strong and keep going no matter what. But she also picked up something heavier, the feeling that she always had to be perfect, always the good girl who never made mistakes. Her mother, Nancy, was the emotional center of the family. She brought warmth, care, and quiet strength into the home. But like many women who lived through the 1950s and 1960s, she carried silent struggles. She gave a lot of herself to keep her family happy and her marriage steady. Over time, Valerie began to reflect deeply on her mother's life, the sacrifices she made, the feelings she kept inside, and the strength she showed without ever asking for recognition. From Nancy, Valerie inherited something powerful but complicated. The idea that a woman should take care of everyone else first. Be the peacemaker. Be the one who holds everything together, even if it means ignoring your own needs. This wasn't meant to hurt her, but it shaped her life in big ways. It's part of why, for many years, Valerie tried to fix the men in her life, whether they were musicians or professionals, while forgetting to check in with herself. When her father passed away in 2016, and her mother followed in 2019, Valerie faced something deeply emotional. She had to go through their belongings, the photos, the letters, the jewelry, the small, everyday items that carry big memories. Anyone who has done this knows it's more than cleaning. It feels like going through a lifetime of stories. You're forced to decide what to keep and what to let go. For Valerie, this experience was even more public, as she shared her grief with millions of people who followed her journey. But what she inherited wasn't just physical things. She also became the keeper of her family's memories, the one responsible for holding on to their story and passing it on. One of the most meaningful parts of her upbringing was food. In the Bertinelli home, like in many Italian-American families, food meant love. It was how people celebrated, comforted each other, and connected without needing many words. But as Valerie grew up and entered Hollywood, that same love for food became a struggle. The industry pressured her to stay extremely thin, even while her heart was tied to rich, comforting meals from home. In her reflections during 2024 and 2025, she spoke openly about this battle. She explained how she had to relearn her relationship with food, letting go of guilt, diet pressure, and unrealistic expectations. Step by step, she found her way back to the simple joy of cooking and eating, just as her mother had taught her. Then there's what she jokingly calls her DNA jackpot. Her father lived well into his 80s, and her mother was strong and full of life. From them, Valerie inherited not just physical strength, but the ability to keep going, even with a demanding career into her 60s. But more than that, she inherited honesty. Andrew was known for being truthful and straightforward, and Valerie carries that with her. In an industry often filled with fake images and carefully controlled appearances, she stands out for being real. Whether she's crying on camera or openly talking about feeling lonely, she doesn't hide it. She shows life as it is, not as people expect it to look. What makes this stage of her life so powerful is how she's choosing to use everything she inherited. She's keeping the good, her strength, her loyalty, her love for cooking, and her determination. But she's also letting go of the parts that held her back, like needing approval from others or being afraid of being too much. She has looked at her parents' lives and made a bold choice to honor them not by copying them, but by becoming the version of herself they never had the chance to be. She is learning to speak up for herself, to say no without guilt, and to understand that being perfect is far less meaningful than being real. This journey hasn't been easy. It's one thing to receive money or possessions. It's something much deeper to receive a legacy and then find the courage to reshape it. Valerie has done that hard work. She has looked at herself and seen both her father and mother reflected back at her, then carefully chosen which parts to carry forward and which parts to finally let go. She is no longer just a daughter following a path that was set for her. Now, she is the one creating the path for herself and for those who come after her. She kept the best, released the rest, and learned her greatest lessons during the hardest, quietest moments of her life. How was her journey to stardom? Did she find it easy? Let's take a closer look. Valerie Bertinelli's astonishing rise. At just 15, Valerie Bertinelli stepped into a life that would quickly make her feel like America's little sister. In 1975, she wasn't a polished Hollywood insider with famous parents opening doors for her. She was simply a girl from Delaware with a soft, feathered haircut and a bright, easy smile that people instantly loved. But the moment she joined the hit show One Day at a Time, everything changed.
And today, Valerie Bertinelli, who played Barbara Cooper in One Day at a Time.
She walked straight into a fast-moving world of fame that even grown adults struggle to handle, let alone a teenager still trying to keep up with schoolwork like algebra. The show became a huge success, and almost overnight, Valerie stopped being just a normal kid. She became a public figure, a familiar face, and more than that, a brand. But back then, that brand didn't belong to her. It belonged to the network, the producers, and the audience, who saw her as the perfect example of a sweet, relatable teenage girl. The television world of the 1970s was lively and unpredictable, full of flashy fashion, loud studio audiences, and constant attention. Right in the middle of it all was Valerie, spending her teenage years under bright studio lights, learning how to stand in the right spot, say her lines perfectly, and make people laugh, while other teenagers were out enjoying dances and school events. This was never just a fun side activity. It was a serious, high-pressure career that started bringing in real money long before she was even old enough to drive. But starting so young came with a hidden cost. She didn't fully control how people saw her. On screen, she was Barbara Cooper, and over time, the line between that character and her real self began to fade. While she earned a lot from reruns and ongoing payments, she was also quietly paying what could be called the price of fame, something that would take years to truly understand. The entertainment industry she entered expected perfection. She had to be attractive, but not too bold, smart, but not too intimidating, and above all, she always had to appear thankful. Valerie handled this balancing act better than almost anyone. In a time filled with rebellious rock stars and changing attitudes, she stood out as the good girl, making her a safe and reliable choice for advertisers and television executives. Every magazine cover, every interview, and every guest appearance added more value to her name. People felt connected to her, as if they had grown up alongside her. And that kind of trust is something no advertising campaign can easily create. It's also a big reason why she remained influential for so long. But life as a teenage star in the 1970s wasn't just bright lights and fan letters. There was intense pressure to look a certain way and maintain a wholesome image at all times. As she grew older and wanted to explore who she really was, she found herself being watched closely. Every small change in her appearance, every late night out, became something people noticed and judged. She was earning adult-level money, but living under constant public attention. This period shaped much of what came later in her life. It laid the groundwork for struggles with body image, a complicated relationship with food, and a strong desire to break free from the role that had defined her for so long. While she was building an impressive career, she was also slowly building a kind of invisible cage made from expectations and public opinion. By the time the show ended after 9 seasons, Valerie had grown from a young girl into a well-known name across households. She had success, experience, and financial stability that many actors never achieve. But she also reached a turning point. The comfort of sitcom life had its limits. It was safe, but it also held her back in some ways. After spending nearly a decade being exactly what Hollywood wanted, she began to realize that the sweetheart image wouldn't last forever. The world she knew was about to change, especially as she stepped away from the familiar studio lights and into a much louder, more unpredictable chapter of her life. But how did she get into rock and roll? Was it about passion? Let's find out. Valerie's rock and roll life. In 1980, Valerie's life took a sudden and unforgettable turn. Her brother convinced her to go to a Van Halen concert, and that one night changed everything. Until then, her world had been filled with TV scripts, studio lights, and sitcom rehearsals. But after that concert, she stepped into a completely different universe, one filled with roaring crowds, loud guitars, and the wild energy of rock music. Meeting Eddie Van Halen backstage felt almost unreal, like two totally different worlds crashing into each other. On one side was Valerie, the sweet and familiar face from a family TV show. On the other side was Eddie, a legendary guitarist who was busy changing the sound of modern music. Despite how different they seemed, there was a spark between them that neither of them could ignore. 8 months later, they were married. In what felt like the blink of an eye, Valerie was no longer just Barbara Cooper from One Day at a Time. She had become part of rock and roll royalty. From the outside, their life looked like a dream. People saw the fame, the stylish leather jackets, the backstage passes, and the glamorous photos that captured the spirit of the 1980s. They looked like the perfect it couple of their time. But behind closed doors, things were far more complicated. Valerie was trying to adjust to a fast, intense lifestyle that often felt out of control, like trying to keep up with a never-ending guitar solo. The pressure to fit into Eddie's world weighed heavily on her. Wanting to stay thin and keep up with the exhausting pace of his life, she turned to illegal substances. A choice she later admitted came from the stress of trying to be the perfect rock star wife. It's surprising to imagine America's sweetheart caught in such moments, but that was the reality of her life back then. She was swept up in a whirlwind of global tours, late-night studio sessions, and a level of excess that her TV background had never prepared her for. Even with all the chaos, their bond was real and deeply emotional. Valerie often described them as two young, frightened people, trying to survive in an industry that could easily tear them apart. In a world full of people who always said yes and enabled bad habits, they leaned on each other for support. Then, in 1991, their son Wolfgang Van Halen was born, and everything seemed to shift. His arrival felt like a reward after years of ups and downs. For a time, the wild rock and roll lifestyle took a step back, and family life became the focus. Valerie stepped into the role of the family's strong foundation. She managed the home, cared for her husband, and tried to keep everything from falling apart as Eddie struggled more and more with health problems and addiction. But even the strongest person has limits. As the 1990s moved into the 2000s, the dream began to fade. Eddie's battle with alcoholism grew worse, and even after losing part of his tongue to cancer, he refused to stop smoking. For Valerie, this was the breaking point. She realized she wasn't in a balanced partnership anymore. She was carrying the weight of constant care and worry. They separated in 2001, though their divorce was not finalized until 2007. It wasn't a quick ending, but a long and painful goodbye to someone she still loved deeply but could not save. Interestingly, their story didn't end with bitterness. After the divorce, they built a new kind of relationship, one based on respect and shared history. They stayed close, supported each other, and even attended each other's second weddings. Most importantly, they remained united for their son. Looking back, that marriage was one of the most important chapters of Valerie's life. It gave her the greatest gift she could ever have, her son, but it also left behind emotional wounds that took years, even decades, to heal. She walked away with a famous name and a place in music history, but also with the scars of loving someone who was often battling himself. So why did she struggle to become perfect? Was she trying to please others? Let's find out. Valerie's struggle with perfection. While the world was busy keeping track of her sitcom money and her connection to a rock star, Valerie was quietly struggling with a very different kind of burden, the exhausting cost of trying to be perfect. For many years, her body didn't feel like something that belonged to her. Instead, it felt like a project the public believed they had the right to judge, comment on, and fix. The headlines during that time didn't celebrate her talent or her acting skills. They focused on something much smaller yet far more painful, her waistline. It's a familiar story in Hollywood, but Valerie's experience had a sharper, more painful edge because she was known as America's sweetheart. When people see you as the girl next door, they begin to feel like they own a piece of you, and in their minds, that piece is not allowed to change. Not even by 5 pounds. But this struggle didn't suddenly appear in the 1980s. It had deep roots in her childhood. Valerie once shared a memory from when she was in 5th grade. A teacher poked her stomach and warned her to keep an eye on that. Imagine being that young and already learning that your value is connected to how flat your stomach is. At home, things weren't much easier. She watched her mother face criticism from her father over weight gain, quietly absorbing the message that love could come with conditions. By the time she stepped onto the set of One Day at a Time, those beliefs were already planted deep inside her. In her mind, being thin meant being safe, accepted, and loved. During her teenage years, she constantly compared herself to her co-stars. On the outside, she played the cheerful, bubbly girl everyone adored. But inside, she felt like she was failing every time the number on the scale went up. Then came the 2000s, and Valerie's story took another turn. She became the face of a booming diet industry. Her partnership with Jenny Craig was hugely successful, but it came with a hidden cost. Her body became something like a living advertisement. She lost 40 pounds, proudly appeared in a bikini on the cover of People, and was celebrated as the perfect example of transformation. But that kind of success can cut both ways. While she inspired millions of people, she also became trapped in a cycle where her income and public image depended on her staying a certain size. She later admitted that being a spokesperson meant living with constant pressure and fear. Fear of gaining weight, fear of disappointing people, fear of losing everything she had worked for. And carrying that kind of fear in your late 40s is an incredibly heavy way to live. The real turning point came when she decided she had had enough. In her recent memoir, she finally spoke openly about the illusion she had been chasing for so long. She came to a powerful realization. Whether she was a size 2 or a size 12, she was still the same person, with the same heart, the same experiences, and the same worth. This became her "Enough is Enough" chapter. She stopped treating the scale like a judge deciding her value, and started seeing it for what it really was, just a simple piece of plastic that knew nothing about her life, her struggles, or her strength. In a bold and honest moment, She even showed her followers the fat clothes she once kept from her dieting days, not as something to be ashamed of, but as a reminder of how harshly she had treated herself in the past. Today, her emotional life feels lighter, freer, and finally balanced. After years of battling body image issues and the crushing pressure of public expectations, she chose to walk away from that endless game. At 65, she confidently shares photos of herself in her underwear, not to impress anyone or fit a standard of beauty, but to show that a body that has lived, loved, struggled, and survived is something to be proud of. She is no longer chasing an impossible version of herself. She has stepped out of the good girl cage that once confined her and into a life where food is not something to fear, but something to enjoy. So, did she reinvent herself? Was it a conscious thought? Let's find out. Valerie's shocking reinvention. For most actors, stepping into a second act in their career is not easy at all. Many try, but few truly succeed. But Valerie didn't just succeed. She turned it into something special, something unforgettable. Instead of simply continuing her career, she reinvented it. It was as if she took that second chance, cooked it slowly with care, added her own flavor, and served it right back to the world during prime time. After spending so many years acting out scripts written by others, she finally found a place where she could be completely herself. When she walked into the Food Network, everything changed. For the first time, she wasn't just performing lines, she was speaking from the heart, in her own voice, in her own style. Her show, Valerie's Home Cooking, wasn't just about making lemon chicken or baking lasagna. It became something deeper. It was her way of taking back control of her life. For years, people had told her what to say, how to dress, and even how her body should look. But now, she stood in her own kitchen, making her own choices. She was no longer following orders. She was leading, and she proved she could do it well. She won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards, showing everyone that the sweet, friendly image people knew so well also came with real talent, strength, and smart business sense. But even a peaceful kitchen can have its moments of chaos. In 2024, something unexpected happened. The network made a decision that shocked fans everywhere. They chose not to renew her contract for Kids Baking Championship. After 9 years of being a warm, comforting presence on the show, standing side by side with Duff Goldman, it all came to a sudden end. To Valerie, it felt less like a goodbye and more like being quietly pushed aside. She didn't hide her feelings. In her usual honest and open way, she went on Instagram, her eyes slightly red and her voice a bit unsteady, and admitted the truth. She was hurt, deeply hurt. She revealed that she had filmed those final episodes during some of the hardest moments of her personal life, and the show had been like a lifeline for her. The headlines didn't just talk about her losing the job, they focused on how she reacted. Instead of putting on a polite smile like many Hollywood veterans might, she chose honesty. She spoke openly about budget cuts and the business side of things. But, more importantly, she talked about what she truly lost: the sense of family, the connection, the community. This was a new version of Valerie, stronger, more open, and unwilling to hide her emotions just to make others comfortable. She began to understand something powerful. She didn't need a big television network to prove her worth. Her fans loved her for who she was, not just for the channel she appeared on. And that realization changed everything. Letting go of the anger wasn't easy, but it became necessary. The industry had tried to quietly move past her. But instead of fighting it with bitterness, she chose to move forward with purpose. She began focusing on her own platforms, building something that truly belonged to her. She introduced a new project called Valerie's Place, planned for 2026, an interactive space where she could cook, talk, share stories, and even podcast, all on her own terms. It was a bold move, a powerful statement. She was basically saying, "If you won't give me a seat at your table, I'll build my own table in my own home." Food became her bridge to a new kind of success. not one built on perfection, but on real connection. This shift from television star to lifestyle creator and entrepreneur became one of the most important turning points in her life. She stopped trying to be what others expected and started embracing exactly who she was. She forgave herself for the years she spent trying to fit into a mold that never truly suited her. In her kitchen now, there are no strict rules, no perfect meals, no perfect days, just real life, real moments, and simple ingredients coming together to tell her story. She traded the pressure of bright studio lights for the warm, rising steam of her own stove, and somehow it suits her even better. The kitchen may have started as her safe place, her escape, but in the end, what she truly gained wasn't something handed down to her. It was something she created herself, something she can now share, pass on, and leave behind as her true legacy. So, what does her life look like now? Is she still her usual self? Let's find out. Valerie Bertinelli's transformation. For many long years, the way the public judged and talked about Valerie Bertinelli was shaped mostly by the people connected to her, not by who she truly was on her own. People saw her as the cheerful sitcom star from One Day at a Time, then as the wife of a legendary rock musician, and later as a grieving widow trying to rebuild her life. Her story, at least in the eyes of the public, felt like a list of roles she played in relation to others. But today, that story has changed in a powerful and refreshing way. The person now making the decisions, setting the direction, and shaping the narrative is finally just Valerie herself. She has moved away from a life where she constantly tried to meet other people's expectations. For years, she adjusted herself to fit into roles that the world created for her. Now, she has stepped into a space where her own peace, happiness, and emotional well-being are the most valuable things she owns. Yes, on paper, people might point to her estimated net worth of $20 million, or the steady income she still receives from over 40 years of television work. But the real story goes far deeper than money. What truly matters is the control she now has over her own life. She has finally claimed full ownership of her story, and that kind of personal freedom is worth more than any paycheck. A big part of this new chapter in her life is her relationship with her son, Wolfgang Van Halen, often lovingly called Wolfie. In many ways, he represents everything good that has come from her past. Watching him move confidently through the award seasons of 2024 and 2025, performing on major stages like the Academy Awards, and carrying forward the spirit of the famous 5150 studio through his band Mammoth WVH has been deeply meaningful for Valerie. She proudly cheers him on from the sidelines, but her role is much more than that of a supportive mother. Valerie has also taken on the role of protector. She has seen up close how the entertainment and music industries can be harsh and unforgiving. She witnessed the struggles faced by the men in her life, including her late ex-husband, Eddie Van Halen. Because of that, she has made it her mission to ensure that her son inherits the talent and passion, but not the emotional pain that often comes with it. She is passing down something far more valuable than fame or success: emotional strength, balance, and self-awareness. Her personal life has also shown how much she has grown. In 2024, her brief and very public relationship with writer Mike Goodenough reminded everyone that Valerie is no longer willing to stay in situations that do not feel right. When that relationship ended, she did not hide away or feel ashamed. Instead, she simply kept moving forward with quiet strength. She has learned one of life's most important lessons: the ability to walk away from anything that does not bring peace or respect. That lesson has become a key part of who she is in 2026. Even her voice on social and cultural issues has grown stronger and more meaningful. On what would have been Eddie's 71st birthday, she shared rare family photos and spoke beautifully about the immigrant experience, reflecting on his journey to the United States. In doing so, she showed that her influence now goes far beyond acting or cooking. She is using her platform to talk about what truly matters to her, and people are listening. After more than 50 years of living under pressure, expectations, and public judgment, Valerie has finally gained something that had been missing for most of her life: the freedom to simply be human. The long process of proving herself is over. The endless accounting of her worth has come to an end. And now, for the first time, everything she has worked for, every bit of peace, happiness, and self-respect, truly belongs to her. So, what do you think about Valerie Bertinelli's surprising inheritance? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.